Did you know that increases in flexibility are made primarily in the brain and in the nervous system, not the body or the muscles or the joints even? Today, we're going to explore some of the fundamental components of yoga practice. Yoga asana, or postures, the breath, and control of the autonomic nervous system through breath control and body control. We're going to discover how up and down regulating our nervous system can not only help us get more flexible, but get the most out of our yoga practice. All right, let's do it. The breath is the key to unlocking our body and our mind's full potential. And this is really what sets yoga apart from other forms of body weight training, movement training, calisthenics, these other types of things that we talk about on this channel. Through the breath, we not only can gain better control of the body and the mind, but we can get much, much more flexible. And we're going to learn how we can utilize the breath to influence two major branches of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic meaning automatic, as it's normally thought, but truly we do actually have some control of this through the breath and through other means as well. The first one we're going to look at is the parasympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as the rest and digest system. We use this to down-regulate our body and to help ourselves relax during stretches or for other purposes as well. We're going to practice diaphragmatic breathing to help stimulate the parasympathetic system. Whenever we're breathing, whether in isolation or in combination with movement, do your best to breathe in through your nose and gently out through your mouth. For this technique, I want you to place your right hand on your stomach, your left hand on your chest. Keep a soft gaze with your eyes, or you can close them completely. And as you breathe in, feel the stomach expand outward. And as you breathe out, feel the stomach draw inward, contracting subtly. Breathing in, feeling the stomach expand. Breathing out, feeling the stomach draw inward. Now for beginners, it can also help to try this laying down. And this can deepen the sensation of relaxation even more. Breathing in, feeling the stomach expand. Breathing out, just letting it fall out completely, allowing gravity to assist. Breathing in, breathing out, deepening and slowing the breaths with each inhale and exhale. Over time, noticing that sense of relaxation washing over the body, that is the feeling of parasympathetic activation. Now, it's very important to get good control and the ability to stimulate this parasympathetic activation for our flexibility practice, for our yoga asana practice, because it's going to help us get much deeper in. But we can also do the reverse effect. We can lift our energies up. We can upregulate our bodies and stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as the fight or flight system. Let's learn how to do that now. To stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, we need to pick the breath up a little bit. We're going to learn a technique called Bhastrika, otherwise known as bellows breath. Think of that as that big pump you use to push air into a fire. That's what we're going to be doing with our lungs and with our breath. To get the hang of Bhastrika, first we're going to focus on the breathing itself. We start with a deep diaphragmatic breath, and then we pull air into the lungs and the chest as well, even allowing the clavicles, the collarbones, to expand upward. And then we take a complete breath out through the mouth. Focusing on a deep inhalation, first into the belly, then into the chest and the clavicles, and out. We want to focus on those inhales. And when we start to get this sensation of energy, we're going to bring in the arms as well. As we inhale, we're going to reach the arms up with open palms. And as we exhale, we're going to pull down, close the fists, and push the air out with our arms as well as our core. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Focusing on those inhales, starting to speed it up. Repeating for many repetitions, the shoulders will start to burn, the core and the whole body will really start to burn. And after a set number of repetitions, we will then relax, restore a more normalized breathing pattern, allowing it to move on its own, and just noticing the effects of the practice. The heart rate is probably elevated, the blood pressure is probably elevated, and just the sense of general energy is probably elevated as well. Techniques like this help us stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. If we're feeling tired, we can use these to wake ourselves back up. But if we're feeling stressed or anxious, we want to use parasympathetic activating techniques like diaphragmatic breathing. Also, for the purposes of flexibility, we are going to be focusing on those parasympathetic activities and diaphragmatic breathing to take control of stretch reflexes. But it's important to be able to do both and play with both the ups and downs to understand that we have control of what used to be considered our autonomic or automatic nervous system. Let's start to apply breathing techniques to physical postures. Applying our breath control in physical postures will help us get much deeper into them. We're gonna start with some of my favorites. This one is called a low lunge, and the target here is the hip flexors on the front of the hip. Now, just as we've been talking about, in order to get deeper into the stretch, we can employ diaphragmatic breathing and stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. What this helps us do is override the stretch reflex. Everybody's felt this reflex before. When you get into a stretch and all of a sudden the target muscle goes, ugh, that doesn't feel good, and it contracts to resist the stretch. This is because our body may not be used to the position, but what's happening here is this isn't actually coming from the muscle itself primarily. It's primarily coming from the nervous system, from the brain. And we can take control of that nervous system, as we know now, through the breathing. So the simplest and most important technique is simply diaphragmatic breathing while holding a static stretch. Another technique we can use to overcome stretch reflexes is targeted contractions of the muscle groups that we're trying to stretch. Let's move into another position here. A nice one to couple with the low lunge is a half split. For this one, my target is the hamstring or the back of the thigh. And so while I'm holding this position, I'll start with those slow diaphragmatic breaths. And now, in order to continue to help get through that stretch reflex, I'm going to consciously contract the muscle group I'm trying to stretch. So with a slight bend in my knee, I'm contracting my hamstring and I'm pushing my heel really firmly down into the ground. I'm gonna hold that for about 10 seconds. And then I'm going to again relax my hamstring, take some slow diaphragmatic breaths. And you'll notice after that contraction, that muscle is able to relax way, way more because we're consciously taking control of that stretch reflex. The muscle goes, I don't want to stretch. So we go, all right, don't stretch, contract. But then when we release that, it releases too, the nervous system as well as the muscle. Now, we can take this even further. I'm gonna come out of my half split and I'm gonna switch sides to my low lunge on the opposite side just to keep things balanced here. Now, this next technique is the most important and most the most effective stretching technique we know of to date based on our most recent scientific studies on flexibility. It's called pails and rails. It's basically two different muscular contractions on opposing sides of the targeted joint. It can be complicated, but if you have a good teacher, they can help guide you through it in a variety of different positions. Let's try this in our low lunge first. For this pails and rails stretching technique, we're gonna start with a passive stretch and some slow diaphragmatic breathing. We already know that in our low lunge, our target muscle group is the hip flexor. So just like we did earlier, we're gonna contract the target muscle group. In this position, I like to think about my heel and my knee like magnets, and I'm trying to pull those magnets together. This is contraction number 1. I'm resisting the stretch, holding for about 10 seconds. Contraction number 2, I'm going to hit the muscle on the opposing side of the joint. So because I'm targeting my hip flexors here, I'm now going to flip sides. I'm gonna squeeze my butt as hard as I can. And in this position, I like to think about polarizing those magnets and pushing my heel and my knee in opposite directions now. Holding this contraction now for about 10 seconds. And then relaxing. And fourth and final step is restoring those slow diaphragmatic breaths in a passive, relaxed stretch. Oh my gosh, really, yeah, it's working. I'm gonna slowly shift into my half split position and we're going to do this one more time. And you'll see how we can apply the same technique in essentially any stretch we want, as long as we understand our anatomy reasonably well. Remember, step number 1 is a passive stretch and slow diaphragmatic breathing. In my half split, I'm targeting my hamstring. So step number 2, I'm going to resist the stretch. I'm going to contract my hamstring and push my heel down into the floor. I'll hold that for about 10 seconds. Then contraction number 2, I'm gonna hit the muscle on the opposite side of the joint. In this case, it's my quadriceps, so I'm squeezing, I'm going with the stretch. And because I know I'm flexible enough, I'm actually going to lift my leg using my hip flexor, which is another opposing muscle to the hamstring. And I'm gonna slide even deeper. For me, I can get into that full split position. After that 10-second contraction, I'm gonna relax and just hit that passive stretch with slow diaphragmatic breaths. After you hold for 30 seconds at least, maybe longer, you can slowly come out of the stretch and relax. So With a little anatomical knowledge, control of the breath, and a lot of focus during our stretches, we can override our stretch reflexes and get significantly deeper into these postures. Not by overly focusing on our physicality, our body, our muscles themselves, but actually switching focus to our minds, to our nervous system, and to the quality of our breathing patterns. If pails and rails is difficult to understand in a variety of different positions, that's all right. It is a tricky one. For now, focus on the diaphragmatic breathing and maybe PNF contraction, the contraction of the target muscle group you're trying to stretch. And if you want more guidance with things like pails and rails, if you want more guidance with your flexibility journey in general, please check out the Evolution Collective, book a consultation, try out the Flexibility Mastery program, or really anything that interests you. And I'm sure we can help you take the next few steps of your journey. All right, tribe. Thanks for joining me today to explore the depths of the breath, yoga practice, and flexibility. I trust you enjoyed today's video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Talk to you soon.